Wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, we are from group 6. I would like to introduce our group's member. The first one is Adinda Fara with present number 1, and then Andhika Rivaldy with present number 6, and then me, Muhammad Rosikhun Abid with present number 30, and then the last one is Yesi Andriani with present number 41. And in this video we're gonna discuss and presenting the result of our discussions. There are 3 chapters in this video. The first one is chapter 13 from Al-Hota book, is about fieldwork, and chapter 14 is about data preparations, and then the last one, chapter 6 on their Gibson book, is about populations, average, parameter estimations. Let's get started.
The nature of fieldwork. Respondents have to manage chain of collection the data. They can involve their own organization or they can contact with a fieldwork agency. Fieldwork or data collection process. All fieldwork involves the selection, training, and supervision or safe person who collects data. Training fieldwork. Training of fieldwork is critical to the quality of that collection. Training should cover making the initial contacts. Making the initial contact can result in cooperation or loss of potential respondents. Asking the question, even a slight change in the wording, sequence, or manner in which a question is asking can distort its meaning and bias the response. Probing is intended to motivate respondents explain their answer. Recording answer. Although recording respondent answer seems simple and terminating the interview should not be before all the information obtained is obtained. Supervision or fieldwork. Supervision fieldworkers meaning making sure that they are following the procedure and technical in which they were trained. Validation or fieldwork. Validation of fieldwork meaning everything that the fieldworkers are submitting authentical interview. And evaluation of fieldwork. It is important to evaluate in fieldworker to provide with feedback on their performance as well as to identify the better fieldwork and build and better high quality fieldwork.
The data preparation process. The entire process is guided by the preliminary plan of data analysis that was formulated in the research design phase. The first step is to check for acceptable questionnaires. This is followed by editing, coding, and transcribing the data. Next, there is questionnaire checking. The initial step, questionnaire checking, involves a check of all questionnaires for completeness and interviewing quality. The next, there is treatment of unsatisfactory responses. Unsatisfactory responses are commonly handled by returning to the field to get better data, assigning missing values, or discrediting unsatisfactory respondent. And next, there is coding. Coding means assigning a code, usually a number, to each possible response to each question. And coding question. Coding question is the response code and the record number should appear on each record in the data. The next, there is transcribing. Transcribing data involves transferring the code data from the questionnaires or coding sheet onto disk or directly into computer by key punching or other means. Next, there is data cleaning. Data cleaning includes consistency checks and treatment of missing responses. Next, there is statistically adjusting the data. Procedure for statistically adjusting the data consists of weighting variable respectification, and scale transformation.
Okay, next, a classification of statistical techniques. Statistical techniques can be classified as two techniques. There are univariate techniques and multivariate techniques. In univariate techniques, there are two data. There are metric data and non-metric data. On the other hand, on multivariate techniques, there are dependent data and independent data. And then next we have the definitions of each techniques. Univariate techniques is statistical techniques appropriate for analyzing data when there is a single measurement for each element in the sample, or if there is several measurement on each element, but each variable is analyzed in isolations. Metric data. Metric data is data that are interval or ratio in nature. And then non-metric data is data derived from a nominal or ordinal scale. There are two types of sample. The first one, independent. The samples are independent if they are drawn randomly from different populations. And then the second one is paired. The samples of paired when the data for the two samples relate to the same group of respondents. And then multivariate techniques. Multivariate techniques is statistical techniques suitable for analyzing data when there are two or more measurements for each element and the variables are analyzed simultaneously. Multivariate techniques are concerned with the simultaneous relationship among two or more phenomena isolations. There are two techniques on multivariate techniques. The first one is dependence techniques. Multivariate techniques appropriate when one or more of the variables can be identified as dependent variables and the meaning as independent variables. And second one is interdependence techniques. Multivariate statistical techniques that attempts to group data based on underlying similarity and thus allow for interpretation of data structures. No distinction is made as to which variables are dependent and which are independent. And then we have types of support. There are two types of estimations regarding populations, namely point estimations and interval estimations. A point estimator is a single value used to estimate a population's parameter. A point estimator is often deemed insufficient because we are confronted with the reality of the right or wrong of the allegations. The second one is interval estimations. Interval estimation is estimations that is done at certain intervals by making boundaries called the lower and upper limits of the estimated interval. In estimating the interval, there are two terms that are often used, namely the level of confidence and confidence interval. The level of confidence is the percentage of the alleged interval that meets the parameter expected if repeated sampling is done. The second one is confidence interval are boundaries of value that meet estimated according to the level of trust made. Okay, next we have arrived on the chapter 6 on the Gibson books. It's about population average parameter estimations. A. Estimating the mean parameter of a population. As stated earlier, there are two types of estimations, namely point estimations and interval estimations. Point estimations for populations average are sample average. To get an estimate of interval for a population average. There are several methods of calculations. There are appropriate for the population diversions, known or not, and the amount of sample data available. And then the A1 is estimating the average interval if the population standard deviation is known. If the population standard deviation is known but the population mean is not, if the population standard deviation is known, for the example, based on previous experience or research, then the confidence interval for the population mean is, you can use the formula on these presentations, on these slides, I mean. And then the A2 is about estimated average lapse if population standard deviations unknown and large sample amount. If the population is normally distributed and the population standard deviation is known, a confidence interval for the average you can make as indicated. Usually, if the population average is unknown, the population standard deviation is also unknown. In this condition, if the number of samples is large or more than 30, then the standard normal table or table Z can still be used, and the population standard deviation is assumed by standard deviations for the sample. You can use the formula if you want to search the average but the sample is have a large amount or more than 30. And the A3 is about estimating the average interval if the population standard deviation is unknown with a small sample number. If the sample size is small and the population standard deviation is unknown, there is standard normal distributions or the table Z cannot be used. To overcome the situations, another sampling distribution is needed. W, as Girl said, an employee at the beer plant developed a suitable distribution in the early 1900s. Henceforth, this distribution is called the student distribution because it is not allowed to use the original name by the company. Similar to the normal distributions, the t-students distribution has frequency curve.
Determine sample size. In carrying out a study, questions often arise about how many samples must be taken so that the information obtained is able to describe the characteristic of the population. This question is difficult to answer in black and white because there are many things to consider in each sampling, such as cost, time, energy, location, and more. Next, estimating to average host intervals. In research, researchers often want to compare the condition of two populations. If researchers want to compare the average, then an indication of the difference can be seen from the difference in these mean parameters. Supporting proportion parameters. Researchers often use samples to estimate the proportion of events in the population. For example, the estimation of the unemployment rate is made in the form of a proportion between the number of unemployed people and the population of workforce. This proportion, as has been studied previously, will spread following the binomial distribution. However, if the amount of n is large, the binomial distribution can be approximated by the normal distribution. Furthermore, the estimator of the proportion discussed is if the n is large so that in its analysis the normal distribution can be used.
The average amount of nutrients consumed by the population in area is 214 calories per day. A social service team conducts counseling in the area. The research whether there is an effect of counseling on increasing consumption of nutrition. 10 people taken randomly, then record the amount of nutrition consumption as follows. In our calories per day, 2013, 2016, 2017, 2015, 2014 1, 2013 5, 2014 2, 2014 3, 2014 and 2014 5. Test which A 0.05. Is there any effect of counseling on nutrition consumption? The answer. Significant level A 0.05. The arithmetical critical value T and counseling. There is not enough evidence that there is an effect of counseling on nutrition consumption. Number 2. A study was conducted to determine whether there is an influence of work method on work productivity. For the work method, 25 workers were chosen. Is it true that the average time needed is 3 hours per unit and the standard deviation is 0.5 hours per unit? For the news method, 20 people were chosen. Is turned out the average is taken 3.2 hours per unit and standard deviation of 0.145 hertz unit. A. Creating 95% confused interval for which work method. B. Test is the old method better than the new method? Use a 5% level significant. The answer. The confuse the interval formula. The method. The result will be like this. New method. The result will be like this. B. Test is the old method better than the new method? Use a 5% level of significance. The arithmetical critical value mean T. The arithmetical so accept how consult not advantage that the old method better than the new method.
So I want to explain number 3. Number 3 is about hypothesis test. Suppose there's test. Here's the test. And the question is, how much is XO bar and HO is rejected? Because n is bigger than 30 and the standard deviation is known, so we should use the theory in the Organic Science book, chapter 7, by using the Z calculation formula. And here the calculation. So we got 19.946 for the answer. Then moving on to number 4. Here's the questions. To know the answer, we must use the calculate table formula, then combine the results by using the variance. So, we got decision and conclusion for the answer here. Number 5. Here's the questions. For number 5 is literally same with number 4, but at here we only use the calculate table formula for calculation. Then here's the answer for decision and conclusion.
Okay, on the next we have number 6. The question is, the Environment Ministry is conducting research to determine the level of noise emitted by buses and trucks. The study was conducted on 50 trucks and 50 buses. The truck shows an average noise level on 91.5 decibels and a standard deviation of 5.2 decibels. The bus shows an average noise of 88.6 decibels and a standard deviations of 3.8 decibels. Thus, with an alpha equivalent 0.05 are the differences in noise levels between buses and trucks. We can answer these questions by use the formula that we have talked about. As we can see, the Z count, as you can see on this slide, the critical value is minus Z 0.05 is equivalent minus 1.65 because the Z count is smaller than the minus Z. Then we reject the whole. So the conclusion is enough evidence to suggest that there is a noise level between trucks and buses. Okay, on the next, number 7. To increase market share, a company conducts massive promotions. Before the promotions of 250 samples, it turns out that the market share of 10%. After promotion, 3 samples were taken, and in fact, 36 of them were customers. With alpha equivalent 5%, make a hypothesis test. Can you conclude there is an increase in market share? Okay, the answer is you can see the formula, the ho, ha, and the p, and also the z count is equivalent 3.75 with critical value of z alpha is equivalent z 0.05 is equivalent 1.65. Because z count is bigger than z 0.05, so reject the whole. So we can conclude there is enough evidence that there is an increase in market share after massive advertising. Okay, on the next, number 8. The question is, a telescope manufacturer expects to make its production telescopes if the standard deviation of resolution is below 2 when it's focused on objects within 500 light years. A telescope is tested 30 times and focused with 500 light years. It turns out that the standard deviation is 1.46. In the telescope worth marketing, make a hypothesis test. Use alpha equivalent 0.05. Okay, the answer for this question is, as we can see, the x count is equivalent 15.4541 with the critical value is equivalent 50.219. So the x count is bigger than the x 0.05.29, so we can accept the hope. So we can conclude the telescope is marketable because there is not enough evidence to state the standard deviation of the telescope is more than 2.
Next, the text and answer about my material. The question is, the Lucky Srikaan cigarette factory production manager recently received a report that permanent workers are more serious in working than daily workers, measured by the level of damage of the rockers they produce. To find out the truth of the news, he conducts a study by randomly picking 500 cigarettes made by permanent workers and 400 cigarettes made by daily workers. It turned out the 60 cigarettes made from permanent workers and 50 cigarettes made by daily workers were found to be damaged. After conducting a test with alpha 0.05, what is your conclusion? The answer, F arithmetics equal as 1 per S2 equal 60 per 5, 60 per 50 equal 1.2. Then the critical value of F 0.05 for 400 and 500 equal 5. F arithmetic is less than F 0.05, 400 and 500. So the conclusion is there is not enough evidence that many cigarettes made by day laborers are damaged. The question 2 is, two managers have a misunderstanding on the issue of whether city dwellers have a greater variability in spending patterns than village headers. To test this, 70 urban dwellers and 60 village dwellers were observed. It turns out that the standard deviation of spending on urban residents equal 4 days and the standard deviation of shopping of villagers equal 3.5 days. By conducting a test equal 0.05, what is your conclusion? The answer is F arithmetic equal S1 per S2 equal 4 per 3.5 equal 1.50. The critical value F 0.05, 60 to 60, 70 equal 0.5. F arithmetic is more than critical value F. So the conclusion is enough evidence that the pattern of urban population spending is greater than that of villagers.
Open SPSS in variable view. Read item 1 to item 12 and the total score. Change the decimal column to 0. In the measure, don't forget to change to scale. Click Data View, then enter result of the questionnaire. Click Analyze. The click Corel, bivariate, CTRA, all item and enter into the variable column. Click OK. And then the output will appear like this. To test valid or invalid, compare the total score of each item with the t-table result. If t-con is greater than t-table, the result is valid. But if t-con is small than the table, the result is valid.
So, I want to explain how to use SPSS to knowing reliability data. First, open SPSS software version 22. After that, click Variable View and in the table of contents with the question items in accordance with the large number of questions. On the questionnaire in this study, we use 12 items with 50 respondents. And after that, in the decimal part, we change everything to 0. Then, in the data view, we copy-paste all the data from the questionnaire. Then, to test all the items, we click Analyze. Select the scale items, then reliability analysis. Then, click CTRL-A, all items except the total score, and move to the items column. Then click Statistik. After that, check scale if item deleted. Then click Continue. After that, click OK. Then the display will appear as below. So here the reliability data.
Univariate analysis steps. First one, open SPSS software version 22. After that, click variable view. 2. In the table of contents with the question items in accordance with the large number of questions on the questionnaire. In this study, we use 12 items of question with 50 respondents. After that, in the decimal part, we change everything to 0. Then in data view, we copy paste the all data from the questionnaire. 5. Then to test all these items, we click Analyze. 6. Select descriptive statistic and then click frequency. 7. Next will appear frequency column, click Ctrl plus A. 8. Next, move all items to the variables column. 9. Click statistic, check all central tendency icons except the sum icon. 10. Next to the dispersion section, check all icons, click continue. Last, after that, click charts, check histograms, and check show normal curve on histogram. Click continue, click OK.
Okay, we will will continue for our SPSS software steps to analyze on bivariate. First, open the SPSS software version 22. After that, click variable view, and then in the table of content with the question items in accordance with large number of questions of the questionnaire. In the study, we used 12 items of questions with 50 respondents, and then in the decimal part we change everything to 0. Then in data view we copy paste all data from questionnaire, and then to test all these items we click analyze. After that, click correlate and click bivariate, and then press Ctrl+A all item and enter into the variable column, and then click OK. After you do the following steps, the results output will appear as you can see. The first, there are descriptive statistic table. It shows each items on its mean and standard deviation, and also the total. And then table of correlations. It shows each items